All right. With that, we drive into our second hour now. It's brought to you by Burdick BMW of Cicero. We're so pleased to be joined by Jim Root, college basketball writer and podcaster. Jim, great to have you on again. How you doing today?
Doing all right. It's almost to the Christmas break of the college basketball schedule, so I'm looking forward to that exhale. But otherwise, things are going pretty well, and excited to talk some hoops with you guys.
Yeah, Syracuse almost made it to that Christmas break in pretty good shape with its resume, and then they got tripped up over the weekend, of course, by Hofstra. What do you make of their resume right now with the 3 losses, 2 of them, close games out in Vegas? Then they beat Tennessee, who, looks pretty good. And, Tennessee obviously smoked Louisville last night. But then they give this quad 3 game back to Hofstra. What do you make of the resume as it stands right now?
It feels really neutral. Like you said, you've got that big win over Tennessee and then the bad loss to Hofstra. There probably is going to stay quad 3. I would imagine it stays that way the whole season. And then there's really nothing else positive or negative there. They've taken care of business in the games they've needed to. The 3 losses that they had before Hofstra were absolutely no fault, no blemish at all. So I'm just looking up at Bart Torvik right now, and their wins above bubble. It does have Syracuse a negative 0.6, which is 88th in the country. I think that Hofstra loss is doing a lot of work for that. But there's still opportunity, and it's not like that is a dooming loss. So many teams get in at large with a Q3 loss. It just narrows the margin for error as they get into ACC play.
We said that yesterday and got called state-run media.
Homers, yes.
Homers for saying
yes.
Maybe it's good for somebody outside of this show to say that.
Yeah. Happy to be the external voice of reason if I can. I'll try.
It is true, though. I mean, there's plenty of examples last year, the year before. I mean, teams get in with bad losses. You gotta make up for it, though. And unfortunately, Syracuse really can't make up for it these next 3 games as they close out non-conference, but they open things up in the conference schedule with Clemson on New Year's Eve. What do you make of this conference as a whole? I mean, Clemson is a good example of a team that, maybe last year would have been a middle-of-the-road conference team, and their net might be in the 50s or 60s. Right now, they're hovering around 30. What do you make of the conference as a whole so far?
I think it's improved. There's still a bottom for sure. Your Georgia Techs, your Boston Colleges, even the way Florida State is playing looks like kind of a deeper cellar, but the middle of the pack is better than it was last season, and there are more big wins to be gleaned. It's not just you have to get the Duke game. You can get Louisville, you can get North Carolina. Virginia looks like it's going to be a really good win for anybody who gets it. So I think it has set up where the improvement in teams like 2 through 12 has given the ACC better chances at distributing big wins across the league and getting more teams into the NCAA tournament as a result.
What do you think is the biggest weakness of this Syracuse team right now as you look at them? And, we all kind of keep in mind, all right, Donnie Freeman's out. He doesn't solve all their problems when he comes back. But what is your biggest concern, I guess, for this Syracuse squad?
Yeah, I think the low-hanging fruit is probably the shooting. I mean, being dead last in free throw percentage nationally is an issue, and it's hard to count those as easy points if you're not even able to make 60%. And it's not like they're knocking it down much from 3 either. I would like to see a little better work on the glass, and Freeman is such a big part of that. You take out an athletic potential pro that is a high-usage guy, not necessarily an awesome offensive rebounder, but he helps on the defensive glass, and he just kind of moves everybody else into the right role. So getting him back is big. And then just, the guards have got to be a little better. Nate George, coming over from Georgia Tech, has been inefficient, maybe not quite the playmaker that was hoped for considering what he showed at Georgia Tech. And then Starling, he's been up and down his whole career, and right now he's struggling again. He's not making shots. He's kind of struggling to finish inside the arc. He's contributing to those free throw issues. They've got to get a little bit more out of those guys as upperclassmen that you'd expect to be setting the tone for Sadiq White and Kyan Anthony and stuff. And I would just expect a little more from them as we get over through the new year and into ACC play.
What are your thoughts on Adrian Autry? Year 3, that transition year, they won 20 games. Then last year really didn't go well. They missed in the portal and just were non-competitive in a lot of games. And now this year, more talented, and as you said, the resume to this point kind of neutral. What do you make of the job he's doing through, 2.5 years?
I definitely wasn't a fan entering this year, and I don't think that was any hot take or surprising take for anybody that was observing Syracuse basketball. I'm still not all the way on board forward, what I will say is he's adapted this year, and they've kind of taken on a different identity than the last 2 years, the last couple seasons. They gave up layups so easily. The defense was really undisciplined. They couldn't figure out how to keep teams away from the rim and to keep teams from getting there quickly. This year, they're elongating possessions defensively. They're a really good interior defense. So he went out and got some bodies, particularly William Kyle, that shored up that issue. It's just now it's kind of filtered over the offensive end of the floor, isn't really giving them the boost and the jolt that they need. But being able to adapt and bring in different personnel and kind of patch over things that were issues in the past shows at least promise of upside. We're not just making the same mistakes again in year 3. I think that's promising. And if they're able to, put together a run in the ACC, I think this year has given enough evidence of he's mobile as a tactician, flexible, and perhaps year 4 is actually worth checking out. But, there's a lot to still be determined this season.
I know we touched on it a little bit earlier in this interview, but in order to make the NCAA tournament, what does Syracuse need to do in the ACC? And not necessarily a win-loss record, but, I guess do you feel like if they finish top 6, they should be good to make it into March? Or do you think, given this bad loss, they might have to do more than that?
I think they could be okay with that. Just looking at the schedule, it all depends on who they beat. And outside of that Clemson game, the start of their ACC run is as soft as it gets. You get Georgia Tech, Pitt, Florida State, Boston College, the 4 worst teams in your first 5 games. But then it gets really difficult. Late January into February, that's when you got to start picking up the wins that matter. And I think if they're able to finish, above 500 and they pick off, you get one of either Duke or Louisville. And unfortunately, they're both on the road. But then North Carolina's an opportunity. Virginia's an opportunity. NC State, maybe not what everybody expected quite from Will Wade yet, but they're ranked highly enough in the net that it would be a really big win. So as long as they can kind of get things settled, get Donnie Freeman healthy by that mid-January timetable, they've got a real chance and they can reel off some wins. Last year, North Carolina looked dead in the water in mid-February, and then they were able to beat some not great teams and also pick up a couple key wins down the stretch. So for them, it just kind of stay afloat. Don't pick up another bad loss, and then start figuring out if you can get those big wins later on in the season.
All right, let's look outside the ACC now. As you look at college basketball as a whole, who's the best team in the country in your opinion? Or maybe give me your top 3.
Yeah, I got to go with the Michigan-Arizona twofer right at the top. They've been incredible against really strong schedules. They've been winning by really impressive margins. Arizona beating Auburn and Alabama by a combined 50 is crazy. And then you look at Michigan beating Gonzaga by 40 and basically everybody by 30 for a while. So I've got to put those 2 right there. And then I'm going to go Duke in the top 3, despite Iowa State being ranked a little higher in KenPom. Iowa State's got that incredible victory at Purdue. But I love the upside of Duke. I think they've got the best player narrowly. I mean, Josh Jefferson's playing great for Iowa State too. But Duke's got so much more upside I think they can access as the year continues to go. They're still kind of sorting out rotations, figuring things out offensively, who they want to be that 2 through 4 in the pecking order after Cam Boozer. And the defense is going to travel like every single game. Going to Michigan State and winning, I think, is going to age really, really well. They've picked up a couple other ones. Like I think the Florida win is actually going to age really well, despite Florida already having 4 losses. I anticipate them having a really good run in the SEC. So I will narrowly go with Duke ahead of Iowa State. And then, of course, you got Purdue, you got UConn, you got Gonzaga. They're all lurking. I think the top 10 to 12 of the sport is really, really good this year.
Man, you'd think back, too, if Wake Forest could have pulled off that win at Michigan, how much that would have improved the conference.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's crazy. I mean, they were right there. It was an impressive
probably should have won that game.
Yep.
Yeah. Talking about different conferences, what do you make of the Big East so far? There was a lot of talk, and I think the last time we had you on, we talked to you about the revenue sharing and how that might impact the Big East moving forward, the fact that they don't have to feed their football schools. They can, really feed their basketball, their basketball teams and concentrate on hoops. Struggling a little bit, though, maybe more than we expected. What do you make of the Big East right now?
Yeah, I think some people have, and I probably overlooked it, and just the idea that you also don't have football to generate those revenues for a lot of those schools. And so maybe they're not going to have as big of a pie to share. They can give a larger slice to basketball, but if the pie is a lot smaller, perhaps they're not going to be able to keep up with some of the other schools. This year it's bleak, man. UConn looks like the very clear best team to me. I still buy St. John's. I know they've got 3 losses, but the Baylor win was really emphatic. And Pitino's the kind of guy that with talent present can really figure it out as the season goes along. And then it's a kind of a toss-up. Seton Hall's probably been the most impressive team to me outside of that. I liked what they did in Maui. The fact that they've got a really stalwart defense with a coach who has thrived with defenses over his entire career in Shaheen Holloway, I think that makes sense. And then I'm just kind of going to wait to see. Does somebody separate from Butler or Villanova or even sort of resurgent Xavier? Because beyond that, Marquette's way down. Georgetown's not living up to any expectations. Creighton looks bad right now after Jackson McAndrew got hurt. So this looks like a league that could get only 3 to 4 bids, and to reframe it back to the ACC, that's really beneficial. If the Big East is only picking up 3, there's other conferences that are going to have to pick up that slack.
Yeah, that's a great point for sure. Jim, we appreciate your time. Remind people where they can find you, how they can consume all of the content that you have out there.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. If people want to check us out at Basket Under Review, that is Trilly Donovan's website, and there's a Discord involved with it too. It's $10 a month, but you get access to the Discord, a lot of scoops inside there, some incredible written content on the website from a lot of people that just love college hoops and getting into the nitty-gritty of it. So we're always active there. We've got a Saturday show where we talk through the slate on our 3-Man Weave YouTube channel. That's at 10 a.m. Central. So encourage people to check that out. And then our 3-Man Weave podcast, that comes out every Friday morning. Myself, Kai, and Matt. I've been going for about a decade now, just talking college basketball for the love of it. So if people want to get into that, we highly encourage it and we appreciate it.
All right, Jim. Great stuff. We appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for the time, and happy holidays.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. You too.
All right, Jim Root, college basketball writer and podcaster. With that, we'll take a timeout. We'll open up the phone lines the rest of the way, 315-437-7644. We are back after this on ESPN Radio.
Time for the most called-in segment of the show. Oh, it's freezing in here.